So let's look at the world beyond us. Now there is a war in Ukraine. Look, I've heard quite a number of things out of the mouths of people, but one would be that people are focusing on the war in Ukraine because it's significant. Why, and what does that mean? If you agree.
Well, yeah, no, I think it's significant for people like me. Let's not call this a global war. But if you go, I'm a white male. I was born in 1963, and kind of European outlook, European education. And for people like me, particularly born quite close to the war, everyone has their narrative, right?
Yeah.
So the narrative for us was, Europe was progressing. And then two wars, but particularly the Second World War, was the most devastating event ever for Europe and for Canada, Australia, the colonized countries, the USA that came as part of it. And so then to come out of the Second World War and out of the Cold War, the collapse of the Soviet Union. And have what we perceive as our Western liberal values extend to Poland, extend to Hungary, extend to Czech Republic, Slovakia, was a really powerful narrative for us. So then to see war come back to Europe has a visceral effect. And of course, so much of the news media that is consumed in English comes out of, or almost all of it comes out of these countries, out of the UK, out of the USA,
America,
etc. So for me personally, yes, this is a big deal. On the other hand, for other nations, it's important, but it isn't the narrative that you grew up with. So I think, what I say to Nigerians is, obviously it's a big event, but Nigeria strategic interests, in my view, are to have connectivity with all parts of the world. So with China, with India, with the rest of Asia, with Russia, with Europe. And so I don't think necessarily that Nigeria or African countries should be bullied into picking sides on this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is the way the kind of world is going, though. When you take this event in Russia and the Ukraine, and then combine it with the tensions in China, you really see this kind of, what do we call, deglobalization, where countries are, the whole world is kind of separating out. Also, of course, combined into that is what we've learned from COVID with supply chain. So we had very efficient supply chains going into COVID. We relied on multiple countries to be able to each produce what they want and or have a comparative advantage and combine, produce the lowest cost good. But we then found out through COVID, this type of supply chain is brittle. So you're also seeing countries separate for that reason. So between the Ukrainian conflict, the China-US conflict, and this COVID issue, I think it's really a watershed for the world in terms of deglobalization. We might have kind of hit peak globalization about 2018 or 2019.
Okay. Let me then share with you one of the sentiments I've heard. Some people believe that this war in Ukraine would bring about a large concept, which we would now know to be global inequality. What do you say about that?
Well,
because of the consequences of the war. Because of the consequences of the war.
The issue of global inequality has risen in the last few years. I think there was much more of a sense of it, but still we're not nearly at that point, right? If you think about what is the number one issue facing, there are two issues at a global level that face us, in my view. One is inequality, and two is climate change. And those are the two top global issues. Whether the Ukraine conflict highlights it, it's certainly highlighted in the sense that for white Westerners, we're more interested in the Ukraine, because they look like us, than we were ever interested in Syria. So the Russian-backed forces in Syria had exactly the same tactics, destroyed Aleppo, destroyed many parts of Syria in that civil war, committed war crimes against civilians, and we didn't react to it. We have a war in Yemen where you have proxies fighting on behalf of Iran and Saudi Arabia, war crimes on both sides, and we didn't, as Westerners, we didn't react to it. So we've reacted to the war in Ukraine. I think it highlights the hypocrisy of the West in a way, in the way we put out our moral values. And even if you look at, for example, in the United Kingdom, they haven't done a very good job, but they've done a better job of welcoming Ukrainian refugees than they did in Afghanistan. Well, Afghanistan, they abandoned people that had supported them in their efforts in Afghanistan, and essentially left them there to die. And so you still see this kind of Western white domination of or concepts that flow through to so many of the actions of Western countries.